She is, she was, she will be, because she has always been the only sign of God. But what sign is she for this year? Don't forget Isaiah chapter 7 verse 13. The Bible says, and God himself.
And he said,
Hear
ye now,
now.
O house of David.
Go to verse 14.
Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign.
The Lord himself shall give you just one sign. Yes?
Behold,
a
virgin shall conceive,
the conception of a virgin,
and bear a son,
to bring forth
a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel.
That will be called Emmanuel, a sign of his presence. Genesis chapter 3, the lesson read today, man has always been in the purpose of the mind of God. Man was chosen to be in the presence of God. Man lost the presence of God. But the mystery in the virgin conception brought back man into the presence of God, because the sign of the baby in the womb of the virgin is Emmanuel, meaning God with us. We have his presence. Emmanuel is the sign of the presence of God. The lesson read to us today, and God spoke to the serpent and said,
and I will put,
we already know the story. Adam, the woman was beguiled by the serpent, and the woman considered to follow the serpent. And God came and said, Adam, where art thou? What does that mean? By conceding to the voice of the stranger, the serpent, Adam lost the presence of God. He lost his place in God's presence. And God now told the serpent, because she was taking a toll, why have you eaten? It was the woman. The woman, why did you do this? It was serpent that began me. And then he said, the serpent, why did you do this thing? Okay, no problem. Caused a down amongst the cattle and the beasts of the field. You will go in your belly. That was sectional. Now, what concerns you in the journey? Read for me, verse 15.
and I will put enmity between thee and the woman,
I'll put enmity between you and the woman,
between thy seed and her seed.
between your seed and her seed.
It shall bruise thy head,
It shall bruise your head,
and thou shalt bruise his heel.
We have read that verse several, as much as I know myself, I have had that verse several. But the mystery that was brought today was that God concluded his own victory. The victory of God was concluded into the woman. The sign, she came today as the sign of God's victory. God concluded all the victory for life over the serpent, over the devil, into the world. That God will take the champion he must have a woman. That God will lead, he must have a woman. That the word of God must stand, there need be a woman. That there will be continuity, there is a need for a woman. Have you noticed? God spoke to the serpent.
Yes.
That was the judgment of the serpent. Although in the presence of Adam and his wife. On this one, let me come a little bit subtle. The serpent had and used it to his advantage. I'll put an enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. Her seed will bruise your head, and you will bruise your seed. Her seed will bruise your head, and your seed will bruise his heel. The serpent said, okay, no problem. If that is it, I have had one thing to my advantage. Through the woman, in whom you have concluded all your victory over me, I threw the man out of your presence. By the same woman, I will destroy me. It was a judgment against the serpent. But he used the judgment and turned it to his own advantage. Hence, for every strong man to be thrown out, you get a woman. Women became a weapon in the hand of the devil. Why? They know not who they are. And that was the voice of Jesus on the cross. Forgive these ones. They know not what they do. God's intention, God's purpose is that in the woman I have concluded my victory over the serpent. And the serpent says, I will use that same woman. In whom is your victory? As a betrayer for all men. Samson was thrown away by a woman. It would have been the wife of Potiphar that will see the end of Joseph's journey. David the king, a man after God's heart, took a course into his blessing just by a woman. Abraham, our father, was snared at the introduction of a woman. Who are you as a woman? A weapon to pull down from greatness, or a sign to give victory over the devil. Each woman should look in that direction. She said, I have come as a sign of God's own victory over the devil. That God will win. We know that. But he was not sure because the devil took hold of the whole world. You know, it was a woman that told Potiphar, that man, I don't think you should go in that direction. And Potiphar washed his hand and said, I have no choice. I'm not going with you. But go and do to him as you wish. He used this discretion. He removed himself and passed him on. It was a woman that came and anointed the Almighty Jesus Christ. That greatness will come. It was a woman. It was a woman that came. The women that came and received the voice of the angel, the voice of resurrection, and were sent to the church. Go back and tell them he's alive. The church was dead as soon as he died. Were it not for the voice of the women, the voice of resurrection in the voice of the woman, the church will remain dead. Who are you? As in, I guess this time she has come more on the female side. But no, she came generally. Because as I sat down and we were talking, and we were after the prayers, she told me that night, 3 o'clock, I began to see what is in this thing. And then by the first lesson, I was seated. And I began to hear their voices. And do you know this? And I was saying, give me one certainty. He said, but you know, all the while we place it that it's only woman that can pray prayer of victory and protection. I was thinking about it. I have been there since I can hear. We have listened to that prayer. But how did it come? He said, because in the woman, God concluded his model for his own victory over the devil. Don't forget I told you, God favored himself in the woman in order to favor man. The announcement the devil had was one and unique. Henceforth, this woman and yourself will be enemies. Her seed will break your head, and your seed will bruise his heel. God is saying, I have put in her. Something is coming from the womb that will become to me. In that revelation, they say she must bring forth the son that will rule the world with the rod of iron. God needed victory over the serpent, over man. That rules over man, the serpent. Lucifer, that became the devil, that rules over man. God said, I will be victorious. Even in that, which becomes your weapon. To throw man down, the woman was used. God now said, that same weapon that you used against my purpose will be the same thing that will produce out of that weapon will come the victory. Out of the eater comes meat. Out of that weapon take my victory. The weapon of the devil, by the time God stands to work himself, his purpose, will destroy the devil. You can go and ask Aman. It was the weapon with which he proposed that destroyed him. Are you seeing the woman there?
Yes.
You ask the people of the king of Babylon. It was the lion that was used. They sighed and said that person should be thrown into the lion's den. Give him to the lions. And the lion turned back and consumed those who signed the paper. Did you see the sign of the woman there? When you begin to see the weapon of the enemy turn against them, the sword, who is there? The woman. A sign of God's victory over his enemy, the woman. That's what she said to me. As a sign of God's victory. You know, she gives me the word every year. A sign of God's victory. By that, one thing is certain. If you will be part of those who that will work for, the last verse of the second lesson says, I want to be brief.
And the dragon was wroth with the woman.
The dragon was wroth with the woman.
And went to make war.
And went to make war.
With the remnants of her seed.
With the remnants of her seed.
Which keep the commandments of God.
The commandment of God.
And have the testimony of Jesus
the
Christ.
The testimony of Jesus Christ. If that will work for you, if a sign will raise your sign, if a sign will activate your own sign, the sign of her name is out now to check for those that keep two things there. There's a difference between obeying and keeping. What you have and you are sure of and you use according to purpose is what you keep. Those who keep are those who he said I said they multiply. They keep. They hand over that thing. Posterity takes that thing from them. Those who obey, it is for themselves. Obedience work for you. But when he says keep, it means that thing must continue from you. To keep is in furtherance to obedience. You obey, you have rehearsed it, you have practiced it. It is working for you. Now, are you giving it out as you have it? Or you are doctoring it so as to pretend? In the new moon service, I told you, it's about you standing in your
value.
Your value. What value did he place on you? What value are you placing on yourself? If you go below your value, your words can never stand in life in this time. I didn't know this is the way she will come. But she said, as a sign of God's victory over his enemies. So I know a lot of things will be put straight. Because in my mind, what are the enemies of God? Anything that will trample down the purpose of God. The first thing the devil did was to withstand against multiplication. Man must not continue. Adam can be. Cain, Abel, Seth were born in the likeness of Adam because he has fallen. Man could not continue. He withstood against that purpose. And God said, there's no problem. Whatever will withstand against my purpose, I will destroy in the same weapon with which you withstood against my purpose. But I by this I begin to love God the more. Because he doesn't want to produce any weapon. He wants to use the weapons of the enemy against them. I guess that will be good for me.
Yes.
It is time for God to arise and use the weapons of the enemies. What did he tell the woman, the serpent? I will make, you see, the two of them became wonders in heaven. And there was a wonder in heaven, a woman to give birth. And another wonder appeared in the same heaven, a dragon. Dragon, the family of snakes. Isn't it? Yes. The chief of the snakes. Having 7 heads, 10 horns, irregularity, and 10 crowns. You see it? Wala wa. But this woman only had a head with a crown with 12 stars. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
2 wonders. 2 signs. If God will overthrow his enemies this year, it is telling me, thus far, as coronavirus has gone, we are still expecting more. Because the enemies of God will pull down by the same weapon with which he withstood God. Have I said anything?
Yes.
But for you to partake, that's where I come. If you understand the analysis I've made, for you to be part in that, you must keep what did God give you that you have obeyed. Now he says you can give it to the next generation. What is producing in your hands? What is having effect that he gave you? Not that you formulated, not that you concocted. What he gave you. He said, by the weapons, open your eyes and see. This time till next year, open your eyes. I have come as a sign of God's victory over his enemy. that the enemy of God will fail and fall. God needed the woman. I should say this at this juncture. This woman does nothing by herself or for herself. She does everything in tangent with her son. If she would do anything by herself, she would have given them wine in Cana of Galilee. Am I talking?
Yes, sir.
She was not called to do anything. And as gracious as she has been, she never did anything. She only introduced these things and said, Uncle, I have seen this thing is not working here. Like I will sit down here and I will say, Falabi, what's this? Just think. Say, why are you doing this? And I'm just sitting. And things are working. So you understand when you pray, you don't give her work to do because she will do no work. Every work that is given to her is passed on to her son. Because the working ability, she is a figure, I told you, the seed that produce the fruits in the which there is the seed. She produced her own seed in her son, and she walks by that seed. What does that mean? If now you begin to keep, you know, God told Abraham, beautify the garden and keep it. Dress it and keep it. To keep. Who are you handing it over to? To you, he's saying, if you hand it over, your working will be perfect with that person who got that thing from you from this time. That your working will be by your seed. If you only have that which you have in yourself and you are not giving it out, or you give out what is poisonous, what some of you what you cannot eat, is what you pass on. You encourage another person to be foolish while you try to go for wisdom when it turns your turn. You teach people to get emotional in their state of commotion, but you try to come and put it on Baba, this is the situation, what do I do? And they give you instruction. But you will give another person instruction by yourself, not by God. And you make them go and hit their head on the wall. Yet, you say you are of God. Don't you share it? Why? I will share a woman. That God will have victory over his enemy in your life this year, it is sure. Have I said anything?
Yes, sir.
But for you to participate in that meal, we call it a feast now. It's a feast. In that feast, it's a place that are those who will be part in that feast. What have they done? Just two things. They have kept the commandments of God, and they have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Too months ago, I've been hammering it on you.
Yes, sir.
The testimony.
Yes, sir.
The testimony. The testimony. But you are not, you think, tear pop. Yeah, tear pop. For the shop, tear to pop, you do it. Are you seeing it? What she brought today is, so like, if I go into it, 11 o'clock, we are still here. So after we deliberated here, I began to see that thing and I began to arrange it perfectly. And I said, okay, if I understand this thing this way, and when I arrange it, I understand it for myself, for my use. God's victory. It took me time to understand it. How can God's victory be concluded in the prayer? God, Almighty God. Now I began to see the reason why he told me point blank that I will support the women. You get it? He told me point blank. Now I know what is hidden in the woman. I know two things just this week that was peculiar. That in the woman, he favored himself. He filled his own. God became empty as soon as man died. God, the Almighty One, became empty at the death of Adam, the man. And he waited in his emptiness. No wonder he would say, I seek a man. You understand?
Yes.
When you are empty, you begin to look for a feeling.
Yes.
He said, I seek a man, but I found none. He was empty until he got to the woman. And where he kept his home. And he filled his emptiness and brought forth the man he wanted, who became the man that will produce every other man. God favored himself. I need that this week. Today again, I knew that God needed his victory. That explains the reason why in the world, whatever belongs to God, man through the devil are prepared to throw it down. Man is looking for a way to thwart it, to destroy it, to put it aside, to put it in the dustbin, to waste it. Celestial Church has been for this long wasted. But he came and said, this is the year you will see God, through this woman, work out his own purpose.
Amen.
Put that in holding ink. Because she came as a sign of God's own victory over his enemy. While we were doing that symbol, they brought a song. He said, Emini, Ijo Mimo. He said, Jesus said, I am celestial. It's not that I'm Baba Celestial again. He said, yes, I'm Baba because I'm the leader, I'm the owner. But wait. Don't do it as if I I went to buy Celestial, I went to pick it from one dustbin. I am. When he said, I'll visit you, I'll visit your grave, come to your grave and open your grave, and until the blood and water came out from the side, there was no opening to the grave. So when the blood and water that came out fell on the ground, he went down by himself to do the business. A minute. And he has been, look at him, but he has said it long ago. And man has chosen to take his place. Man now rule in the church. In the parroquia, you see, Awala one day. When you want to, when they leave out and they see they can become ordinary member, they will formulate church elders, elders committee. They because they want to be known in the place of God. The moment you create the points that the junctions that God never created, God becomes empty. You make God empty in your life, creating what he did not create. God said he wants to sweep now. So he sent the woman in the picture of, I need my victory. And you know, if God favors himself so as to favor man, he would have his victory so that man can have their victory. But to participate, I tell you, in just one law, or just one module, in two parts. Keep a commandment of God and have the testimony of Jesus. It means you must not keep the commandment without him testifying to what it is. So don't say, because Baba told me that was how I kept it. No, you are keeping nonsense. You are keeping emptiness. As soon as you heard from SBJ told me, wherever, from whoever you heard and you hear anything, it doesn't bother God. The moment you ask God and he never testifies, don't do that thing. It's not celestial. I've kept that commandment for 36 years plus. I don't want to know who is doing what. I'm not ready for you to shout and scream my name. All I want to do is, what did God say? A beautiful time. Because this sign will go up on, I don't know till when. Because for the first time in our year-to-year meeting by 3 o'clock, she came accompanied by a lot. What are these one looking for? The one that just left. Everybody. What are you looking for? He said, I came with my team. I said, what team? I didn't plan for team. I only plan for you. And those who came, I know your kitchen cabinet. What is this big large thing? He said, I came with my team. Because I came as the sign of God, sign of God's victory. I will open my eyes and see. As long as I am alive, I want to see the victory of God over his enemy this one. So that by that I will have my own victory. Am I saying something?
Yes, sir.
The victory of God, the enemy of God. God said, what did God say in your life, to your life? Let me come to you now. In 5 minutes, I'm done. What did God say as touching your life? And that thing, up until this day, has been withstood the impossibility. So he told you in the dream. He told you by prophecy. He told you in the visions. He told you in the songs that I will bless you. And you remain ordinary. Everything that stands against his word, his purpose, becomes his end. And as soon as the woman comes, the failure of the enemy is highlighted. At the appearing of the woman, the failure of the enemy becomes focus. My question now is, are you ready to be part of the victory of God over his enemy?
Yes.
Because how long will you remain being ordinary when you were born in dignity? When you were born with integrity, when the life upon you has a precious value. Those who devalue themselves, they obey the commandments of God, but they cannot keep them. You know, we have talked very, very goodly about Esther.
Yes.
But yesterday, it was shown to me that Esther devaluated herself. And that's why Mordecai said, don't think you can be alive. God will raise an army that will fight against these Ahasuerus. You and your husband and Haman will be gone. We will be saved. What a line. And that took her aback. And she looked to herself and said, I am a Jew. Not a Babylonian. Not a mean and partial. Let me talk to our God. Please fast for me. I have sinned. I devaluated myself. Being 3 days fasting. And let me go. If I die, I die. I told you, fasting belongs to those who sin. Yes, sir. When those things were happening, did Mordecai fast? Esther quickly called for fasting. The only thing Mordecai did was he saw the value and wept. This man abused you. He defied you, God. How can a man defy you and have no hands to fight him? Fight for yourself. And Esther said, oh, I devaluated myself. Fast for me. That's why I will not fast. Because I have kept my value. Am I talking?
Yes.
You want to be part of the beautiful thing, of God's own victory. It is time. Because I told you, if I come in the, I know this time, but I would explain this thing the more. I will break it down the more in the classes. Because the time is fast spent. If you go into the nitty-gritty, we are here till 12. Yes, you will sleep here, it doesn't bother anything, but no. Then you sleep stressed. And we still have programs tomorrow. If God will take his victory, I must be part in that victory. I must have my own part of his victory. That is the mentality I want you to go in. So that as we go to pray, You want to say, God, I am sure this year you want to take your victory. As this woman has come, as the sign of your victory over your enemies. In your victory, I take my victory. You now begin to name the enemies of God in your life over miscarriage, over no marriage, over childlessness, over what is that thing? You know the problems. You know the enemies of God in your life.
Yes.
Let that don't see man now. It was my uncle that said I would not do well in life. It was my uncle's wife that fought with my mommy and say she would take that vengeance on we children. It was my mother's sister that said everybody that is in our family will not have anything. Put them aside. Let God have his victory and you partake. But for you to partake, I gave you the series, the module. 1 in 2 parts. Keep the commandment of God. And you must have the testimony of Christ. Because in heaven, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Number 2, you on earth, you only need to keep the commandment of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. 2 in heaven, 2 on earth. Two for two. The sign began in heaven. The sign appeared in heaven. The sign did not give them their victory straight. They overcame by 2 things. They did not overcome by Jesus Christ of things. Because I told you, it was this woman that processed the lamb to become the man.
Yes.
And the man is here. Not in heaven. So they are overcoming. Will be by the figure, his figure in heaven. But you here, you're overcoming. It's by his presence, his figure with you here. No cheating. So those of you that believe the angel, I'm not an angel. Angel, they don't have wahala. They have solved their own problem. They solved it by the same module with which you must solve your own problem. The devil attacked the territories of God, and God took victory from heaven down to earth. Now he wants to give you to partake. That's why he sent the woman now as the sign of God's own victory over his enemy. I can't forget that thing. Because she said it, I was like, this was not the common line we normally use. This time, God wants to he's intervening in some things. He's interested in some things. It's our time. Let's go before him.